Very good. Recording in progress. Okay, thank you everyone and welcome back. We move on to the fourth module of our MASR 08 SDGs and Science Religion Implications. Our resource person for today is Marita Goodson. Her goodwill had been always there with us throughout this program in the last 4 years. She has been a source of grace and blessing to our program. And today we are privileged to be listening to her wisdom as well. So, to Merita Goodson is the Associate Director of Emerita and a founding member of the Stanford Geriatric Education Center, a national center in ethnogeriatrics within Stanford University School of Medicine. Ms. Goodson was co-recipient with Chaplain Bruce Feldstein, MD, of the Templeton Award for the medical school required curriculum. They developed spirituality and meaning in medicine. Merita has received an international award from Prime Minister of Turkey for her contribution to the first International Care Congress in Istanbul from May 2 to 8, 2005. Ms. Goodson founded and co-chairs the Catholic Diocese of San Jose Stewards of Our Common Home. The cry of the earth and the cry of the poor are her primary focus and concern. Merita also serves as the secretariat of the biannual Fratelli Tutti Conference planning, which includes Tangasa University, Global Ministries University, and Harmony Institute, and representation of the Vatican Dicastery for Integral Human Development. Currently, they are planning the third such three-day global interface conference for February 6 to 8, 2025. Ms. Goodson serves as faculty for Global Ministries University, where she teaches courses, including the one on Laudato Si. Beginning in August of 2011, Ms. Goodson with Jerry Goodson have co-developed, implemented, evaluated, and revised a 40-hour interface leadership program in partnership with Christian, Muslim, and African indigenous religious leaders in Kenya. Her graduate degree was a MHS awarded by University of California in June 1984. Since then, her research and collaborative studies in ethnogeriatrics and environmental studies have provided the focus for her education. So, we are indeed honored and privileged to be listening to you, Dr. Marita, today. Over to you.
Thank you, Father Augustine, for your generous introduction. And it's a great pleasure to be with you this morning and actually this evening, forgive me. I'm sitting in the light of the morning sun, and I know you're sitting in the light of the evening sun, or it has already passed for you in India. I have a great passion for the environment and for what we can all do. And so that will be the focus of my presentation, the interface of science and religion, and with regard to care for creation. So here are my slides.
There.
And let me start from the beginning here. There we are. So the title of my presentation today is How Science and Religion Challenge Us to Respond to the Climate Crisis, and What Else is Needed. Today, in the Catholic tradition, is the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, and our current Pope in Catholicism took the name of St. Francis, and he has been one of the leading proponents of our paying attention and committing ourselves to the environment. So he honors St. Francis, and his encyclical in 2015 to the world, not only religious people, but to all people of goodwill, is named in honor of St. Francis's prayer. And so I would like to start with this prayer. I know we began with a moment of silence, of common silence, but I would also like to use these words of St. Francis. And I am hoping that our Muslim brothers who are present can realize that we are praying to Allah as well in these words. Most high, all-powerful, good Lord, yours are the praises, the glory, and the honor, and all blessing. To you alone, Most High, do they belong, and no human is worthy to speak in your name. Praised be you, my Lord, with all your creatures, especially brother's Son, who is the day and through whom you give us light. Praised be you, my Lord, through Sister Moon and the stars. In heaven you formed them, clear and precious. I have to push a button here somewhere. Praised be you, my Lord, through Sister Water, who is very useful and humble, precious and pure. Praised be you, my Lord, through our sister Mother Earth, who sustains us and governs us and produces diverse fruits with colored flowers and herbs. So now I want to, I want to go back here a moment. So the goals of my presentation today are first to link my presentation to the goals of sustainable development. It's my understanding that the first few lectures of this semester program are under the goals of sustainable development. To inform you of the best sources of scientific information on climate change, to inform you of strong religious movements in Kenya, India, and the United States addressing climate change, and to suggest what we might do with this information. And finally, to encourage each of us to leave with a new commitment to action, to the response of the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor, which are words that Pope Francis uses in Laudato Si. So looking at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, I have identified 6 that in my experience, and in my experience of working and collaborating with groups around the world, are addressed by working on climate change. The first one is zero hunger, number 2. Then number 6, clean water and sanitation. Number 13, of course, which addresses climate action. Number 14, life below the water surface. Number 15, life on land. And number 17, partnerships for the Sustainable Development Goals. So what scientists are teaching us? Let me see if I can move this a little bit. So the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental panel on climate change was established in 1988 by the United Nations. And that is by far the most significant source of information on climate change. And I'll explain that in a few minutes in more detail. The second one is something that is available in English. It's the book Draw Down, which title continues the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. And that was written in 2017 and edited by Paul Hawken. It's both a book and a website so that current developments are described in a report, which is available on the website, a report given every year. The most recent one is from March 2024, and a newsletter. And I'll speak more about that as well. So the International Authority on Scientific Information on Climate Change is the intergovernmental body of the UN, whose purpose is to advance scientific knowledge about climate change caused by humans. The IPCC received the Nobel Peace Award, which they shared in 2003 with Al Gore, who has really headed a major movement in the United States. Now, the rules and governing principles of IPCC are as follows. It has 3 different committees. One committee is devoted to identifying the risk of climate change caused by human activities. The second committee addresses the potential impacts of climate change. And the third, the possible options for prevention. The assessment reports are prepared over 6 years by 3 different working groups. So you have a working group on physical science basis of climate change, on the impacts and adaptation, and number 3, on mitigation of climate change. Now, these reports are given every 6 years to the Attorney General of the United Nations, and they're usually given in the spring, and they're combined in what's called a synthesis report. And it happened that the last report was given to the Attorney General, the synthesis of all 3 working groups, a few months before COP 28, which was held in Dubai. And so they had fresh news to work on in the COP meeting last year. So see if I never quite know what to do with this. Let's see, let me bring it down to the bottom. I think that's the best. This is a picture of Antonio Guterres, who is the Attorney General of the UN, with the Youth Advisory Council. And you can see how happy they are to meet with him. I had a 2-minute clip, which I'm not going to take the time to play right now, with him meeting and talking to these different young people. But of course, I think many of us were aware last year in 2023 of the COP meeting in Dubai, there were so many youth from all over the world bringing their voices and demonstrating. And so it was important to me to show you this picture of the Attorney General meeting with the youth, and the youth expressed how important climate justice is to them and how important it was that the Attorney General met with them, heard their voices, heard their concerns. Now I want to go back one. Let's see here. Yes, here. This is a picture of the closing of the UN COP28 climate talks. And while there was disappointment in how much was accomplished by that meeting, there were two important things that were accomplished. And one was this one that is highlighted at the top, that all nations signed off that they would deal with the transition away from fossil fuels. And the second one was that they would plan, there would be a committee that would meet that would plan and establish a fund to assist the developing countries with the challenges of climate crisis. So I'm going to stop there for a minute. I've shared a lot of information. One thing I should say is that the authority of the United Nations for scientific information has been given to the IPCC by a common vote, and each country delegates from among their top scientists. Every 6 years, there are new committees. And so all the countries that participated in the United Nations send their from among their very best scientists to this panel, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And so every 6 years, those leading scientists change and begin their work. So are there any questions about the United Nations, about the IPCC? In a minute, I'll say a little bit more about the drawdown book and website. Well, no, I already covered that. So access, let me say one other thing, how this information works. It's brought to the United Nations, and it is summarized and discussed. And then it is given to the policymakers that are there from different parts of the world. And those policymakers are responsible for translating it or for communicating it, whichever is necessary, to their nations. So that's, and of course, in a minute, I'll talk about how all this information gets transmitted. But that's how it happens at the UN. There is a special session by the IPCC with policymakers that are going back to their countries to explain this scientific information. So are there any questions or comments?
Marita, I have a comment that I think most people don't know, that Kenya is part of the committee that will decide on this fund for transition away from fossil fuels. I believe Kenya is part of that committee and has a key role among the developing nations.
Well, thank you. Thank you for expressing that and bringing that. Now, all the nations are supposed to transition away from fossil fuels. And there are special assignment to who are the developing nations that need assistance in dealing with the climate crisis. So that is a distinct group. And it sounds like, Jerry, that the comment is that Kenya is part of both of these.
Correct.
Well, I'm grateful to know that.
I have a comment to make.
Yes, please.
You mentioned a very beautiful point of that the issue of cry of the earth and cry of the poor.
Yes.
Actually, in India, I'm just putting in my own situation. The poor have no voice. If we speak about indigenous community who are living in who are actually they basically preserve the biodiversity of the earth of Indian nation, and they have no right over the land. They basically sometimes most of the tribals also live in the forest areas, and where they are displaced, they have no right to they can't own land. So government takes to the land, and India is all highly dependent on the fossil fuels. For example, if the coal, where energy is being so there is a kind of uh, it's all taken over by the rich people, by the rich industrialists and rich corporate sectors, and the poor have actually no voice. I don't know when you mentioned the cry of the poor. It's in we are in a very desperate situation, but we can't do anything. They are just pushed out. They have just no identity. They can't own land. They're not owners of land. Government is owner of the land. So as and when, in the name of development, they come in and they just capture. I'm talking a lot of corporate sectors who come moved in, and they've captured a huge amount of forest lands, which forest is supposed to be lungs of the which gives a lot of oxygen. And poor have no voice. I think the cry of the poor needs to be taken care of. And I mean, there's a kind of bit of a dichotomy between the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. The poor don't own the earth, and the rich own the earth.
Thank you very much for your impassioned and truthful statement. Of course, the earth doesn't have any voice either, does it? So what is that phrase, cry of the poor, cry of the earth, was used by Pope Francis as he visited many of the poor countries of the world. And for example, shortly after the typhoon in the Philippines, you see him with the people of the Philippines and the torrential rain and devastation and loss of life there in the Philippines. And I certainly support your statement, the statement you've made. It's a metaphorical a phrase that is trying to get our attention, but you're absolutely right. Thank you for your comment. So a little bit more about Drawdown, which in its title has the most comprehensive plan to reverse global warming. So this book, as I said, was published in 2015. It was edited by Paul Hawken, and they have an excellent website and annual report. This is an international coalition of researchers, professionals, and scientists. 200 scientists have worked on this project. The project collects, analyzes the best available data. For example, they draw from the IPCC, and as well as data on social, ecological, and technical solutions. So this book is focused on solutions that can substantially decrease the concentration of atmospheric gases. The solutions in the book and on the website are ranked based on the total amount of greenhouse gases they can potentially avoid or remove from the atmosphere. So there are 100 solutions, and they are rated and noted in this book based on the amount of greenhouse gases that they can potentially remove from the atmosphere or avoid from appearing in the atmosphere. So this is the book. And now I want to go to how is this scientific knowledge distributed and applied? So there are these policy debates, first of all, at the United Nations. And we had an example of those from COP28, any of us that followed that meeting. Now, governments' implementation of agreed upon goals of the UN. So the policymakers come back to your government and based on their democratic agreement, work on the goals of the UN. The IPCC assessment report includes a summary, as well as this report, which I've already mentioned, a report and meeting with policymakers. So this is the website for the report. And then in your countries, the nation state and the regional and city and rural governments, to the extent that they are aware of this, people within those governmental entities debate the legislative efforts and come up with a policy. Now, I just want to point this out for a moment. I'm going to talk in a few minutes about the different forms of climate groups and climate efforts throughout the world. And on a very local level, it's very important to know and to examine the policy in general that our government and our counties, our regions are proposing and how they relate to climate change. And so that's how it comes down to us, is through legislative efforts and policy. That's how it comes down to citizens of the world who are in democratic nations. Now, of course, the news also is a conduit for this knowledge. There are different global organizations which promote it, national groups, and then your local newspapers, as well as city governments and faith communities. Universities follow up very much on the results of the COP meetings. And I know in Nairobi, there was just a new, I don't have it right in front of me, but there was a new university established that focuses on climate issues. So they do it through research, through publications, by incorporating it into courses that are taught, by developing new courses for all levels of education. We have activist groups, globally, nationally, regionally, locally, again, all ages. We have several, here in the United States, we have several youth groups. And I know that's true in Africa and India as well. And of course, the NGOs implement programs globally at the grassroots level that correspond to the data on the regional needs. So they translate that COP report and that information as it relates to their regional needs. Are there any questions about how this scientific information is developed and how it's transmitted and how it comes down to our responsibility to act on it?
There's a question from Sister Jane Marita.
Yes, Sister Jane.
It's in the chat.
Can you read it to me, Jerry?
Sure. What happens to the country whose policymakers are slow in applying the policies within the 6-year time period? Example, countries that are in a situation of conflict, such as South Sudan.
Well, thank you for bringing this up before us, Sister Jane. Of course, the situation is worsening. Not only is the climate effort being addressed, but the war itself is instrumental in putting more pollution into the environment. And of course, the people are suffering so from displacement, from lack of food and water, from pure exhaustion, from risk of the dangers of war. So you bring up such an important point, Sister Jane, which is that in these countries, like Sudan, Gaza right now, Lebanon, Ukraine, where there are active wars going on, and I'm sure there are other places where there are wars going on, that pollution is not only being addressed, it's being increased. And so, so we've talked about the sources of information. Now, we want to talk about the religious groups. And again, I'm going to try and move this just a minute. Well, there are major, I'm going to talk about the major religious initiatives. Now, one of those is Faith for Earth, which is an initiative of the United Nations Environmental Program. And so this is a group that works right within the United Nations, and it promotes faith leadership, faith-based organizations and communities as custodians of far-reaching, value-based perspectives on environmental sustainability. So it brings these diverse religious groups, faith perspectives, and puts them in communication with each other. Secondly, in 2018, this Faith for the Earth was under another name at that time. It had religion in the title. It was an initiative of the United Nations. And they hosted a global conference with hubs in many different parts of the world that were able to share their initiatives and faith movements with other participants. And this was a marvelous conference. The host was in Iceland. And I remember it well as we got feedback from all over the world about what was happening on the ground. And as a result of that, Global Ministries University one of the two major sponsors of this religion and science program, together with Tangaza University in Nairobi and the Harmony Institute, adopted this model of a global interfaith conference, and since has put on 2 3-day global interfaith conferences, one in August 21 and another in February 23. And these had hubs in Indonesia, Africa, and the Americas. And they were participated by 3,000 people in 19 countries. And they still are available there on our website, all of the different panels from both of those conferences. When I use the word our, I mean the Global Ministries University website. Now, another wonderful international interfaith advocacy movement is Green Faith. And this supports the divestment of fossil fuels in both the public and private sectors. So it's a global network, not local, but global, which has local initiatives to form interfaith circles to support their mission. They are aligned with the 2016 statement of the Islamic Society of North America, which states that it is contrary to their faith to invest in fossil fuel companies whose operation and products cause grave harm to humanity and creation. And in Paris, I highlighted this last year. This was in the press, that a group of Green Faith interfaith leaders chained themselves to a Parisian footbridge to protest against Total's oil pipeline project in Uganda. So, of course, these are two interfaith global movements, one at the UN and another with local interfaith circles around the world. Now, the Laudato Si movement, let's see if I can get rid of this here. Laudato Si, as I mentioned, refers to the encyclical by Pope Francis in 2015, which integrates science and religion. So I don't know how many of you know that there is a Pontifical Academy of Science, which has 80 academicians, and they contributed to Laudato Si. Now, coming out of this encyclical, which is a very powerful statement, I'll say a little more about that in a minute, developed the Laudato Si movement, which was formerly called the Global Catholic Climate Movement. This is a movement coming out of Rome that has representatives in as many nations as allow democratic representation. And it's done a tremendous amount of work. And part of that is that it continuously feeds with prayer and with different initiatives and different themes and resources, these national programs, Laudato Si programs. So one of the things after Pope Francis wrote this 6-chapter, 200-page encyclical, is that he asked the Vatican Dicastery for Integral Human Development to develop a plan for implementing it. And he wanted to give people, he wanted to keep the concerns of Laudato Si on the care for our common home. He wanted to keep that in front of the Catholic world, and he wanted to assist to have them have some kind of a plan to be able not only to organize their own work, but to also record their own work for other people to see. And I'll go into that in a moment. The United States, as did many countries, established its own national movement to support the work of climate work in the country among Catholics. And that's called the Catholic Climate Covenant. And it's done an amazing amount of work across the country here in the United States by supporting people and providing a monthly meeting of representatives, which I attend, of dioceses from all over the United States that have active groups. Then this is another tool that developed. It's a film called The Letter, which gives us a very engaging representation of the risk of climate change. So this film is very interesting, and we're going to show it to you in a moment. We're going to show you the trailer. Some of our groups here in the United States, including our group here in San Jose, showed the film. Some people have shown it in their living room and invited friends. Our particular Catholic parish, under our direction, recruited people from other parishes as well as our parish participants to come and to watch The Letter. We did it in a format that we thought would be easiest for people to free their calendars, announcing it 2 months ahead of time. And that is, we offered a free lunch. In our case, we offered pizza and green salads and lemonade and different desserts for the first half hour that were of no cost to people. And then we showed the film, which is 1 hour and 20 minutes. And then we had a discussion of 20 minutes afterwards. And the discussion, instead of telling people things that they can do, we asked people, first of all, what did they feel watching this film? And people responded what their feelings were. And then the second question was, and we broke into small groups first to discuss the two questions before we came back to the larger group. The second question was, what do you feel moved to do? Do you feel any sense of responsibility or need to do something? So there's this is really all about becoming aware of our global brothers and sisters, that we truly are one family, and that that requires a conversion. We can't only be concerned about our own family or our own friends, but we have to open our hearts, which is a process that needs to be supported. And that's a process of spiritual conversion. Now, there's another exciting way to deal with the Laudato Si Action Platform. And that is that is a method whereby people either individually, I think it's much more effective to work with others in a group and not alone, consider each of the Laudato Si goals, which I'll speak about more clearly in a moment, and decide how they want to implement them. And this can actually, the group can actually meet online. We had a very successful online group that worked with these information sheets on each of the Laudato Si goals and shared it. I think it's better to go slow, like to take one a month, and there are prayers and there are resources for different goals, all listed. It's an online compilation of all these materials, which can be, they aren't purchased, they're freely given by contacting Marilyn Cott, who chaired that effort. I was also part of that effort, developing these information sheets. I don't know why my next slide is not coming. Let's see here. Is there any other, it looks like there's a third chat there, Terry.
Yeah, there is a question. Let me bring it up here, just a second. Question is there any penalty for countries not doing their responsibility in regard to the goals for changing away from fossil fuels? In other words, is there any penalty for countries not doing what they're supposed to do?
That's such an important question. And that was discussed at COP28. And it was decided that they would not at this time recommend any penalties. I don't know if that will happen in the future or not. But at this time, there will be no penalties. I see I've paused my, let me see if I can. Your screen is paused and I don't quite know how. Well, Jerry,
Marilyn, Marita, if you go to the lower left-hand corner of the slide and put your cursor there, you may activate the controls if that's.
now, is that remote control?
No, just your cursor. Put your cursor on the lower in the lower left-hand corner.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. So we saw this already. We want to go forward. Thank you very much, Bob.
Do you see anything there? Do you see it?
Yes, and I've moved it already. Thank you. You saved the day.
But it hasn't advanced the slide. It's still the same slide.
It hasn't because it's advanced it for me. Huh. Let's see. Well, let me say something.
Maybe you can unshare and then share again or something like that.
Yes. Well, this is a good time to pause anyway and to have Jerry show the 2-minute trailer to the film we've been talking about, The Letter.
Okay, I'm gonna have to, yeah, so I have to go now and bring up the film. Okay, here it is. Should I start it, Marita?
Yes, please.
Can everybody see it? Can you see it, Marita?
Yes.
Globally anticipated encyclical on the environment.
La naturaleza grita. Téngase. Téngase.
Jerry, we don't have the volume.
Pardon, Marita?
We don't have the volume, I don't think.
Yeah.
I-
Jerry, when you share the screen for the video, there's options on the share thing to share the video and the sound.
Okay,
Important to click those two options.
okay. Let's see.
Is that a green button somewhere, Robert?
Down the bottom is the share. The green button at the bottom is share. You click that and then you choose, you don't click it yet, but you choose the item that you want to share. And then if it's a video, someplace different versions have it different places.
Share
But
sound, share sound.
share sound and share video also, or optimize video.
Okay. I got them both clicked. Let's see it now.
Could you start at the beginning, Jerry?
Okay.
Well, the Vatican releases Pope Francis's wildly anticipated encyclical on the environment.
La naturaleza grita. Deténganse. Deténganse.
Refuge climatique, un manque de la protection de la nature qui pousse aujourd'hui de nos populations à quitter chez nous.
É perder a terra, a floresta, o grande agronegócio que está chegando aí.
Marine heat waves are causing an unknown amount of death among corals.
I want all the global leaders to do something to stop climate change, because if it's not going to be stopped, it's going to harm our future.
Queridos poetas sociales, porque ustedes son poetas sociales porque tienen la capacidad y el coraje de crear esperanza allí donde solo aparece descarte y exclusión.
Je n'arrive pas à rester tranquille. Parfois, j'ai un esprit qui voyage.
O mundo vai mudar. Porque o que estava encoberto, hoje está sendo descoberto.
Il faut lisser des liens très forts et il ne faut jamais rompre ce lien.
You are my hero, you are.
Che nessuno di noi è un'isola. Abbiamo tutti bisogno gli uni degli altri.
Wondema, pour himbe mbada protéger l'environnement.
Try to be the change you want to see in the world.
We arrived as individuals with very different stories, but we all shared a dream.
Thank you, Jerry. This is a good time to stop for a few minutes and see if we have any questions or comments.
I just have a comment, Marita, that the recent hurricane which hit the United States shows that the climate crisis has no limits. It can hit any part of the world, even the developed world. And many people lost their lives with this latest hurricane, Helene, which devastated many parts of the United States. So it's not just one part of the world, it's the whole world is being affected by the climate crisis.
Yes, and there's another chat, which I'd like to take before we go on with the slides.
I'll read it.
And Christopher.
Fuel profits, will they continue to hold an advantage over nations with limited access to such resources? Global data reveals that over 80% of the world's energy is still derived from fossil fuels. And countries like Saudi Arabia, Russia, and the US heavily rely on these industries for economic growth. How will this imbalance affect future global energy transitions and economic equality?
Well, that is the big problem, isn't it? China right now emits more gases than any other country, and the United States is next. And both China and the United States are instituting change in the use of global fuels, but it's very slow. And I can't really answer that question, except to say that people of faith believe that there is possibility through divine presence within all of us to make change and to move forward on behalf of global humanity. But how that will happen, I don't know. I do know that China and the two greatest polluters have made significant change. But the change does not address certain areas. And so we'll have to, that is a question for all of us to hold in our hearts. Now, right now, I want to go back to our slides. And I talked about the Pope's encyclical and about his asking the Vatican Dicastery for Integral Human Development to give some tools to the global community to act on and to frame and organize their efforts. And that is what developed into what is called the Laudato Si Action Platform. Now, that action platform has a place to look at the seven goals. So all of this climate action that the Pope has put forward is organized into 7 goals over 7 years to implement these goals, and through 7 different venues. So it could be, for example.
Excuse me, Marita. Some people are on cell phones and it's hard for them to read it. If you would go to the upper side, the upper left, where it says from the current slide,
yes,
expand that.
Oh, yes, of course. There we go. Let me just go back a slide. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob. I forgot to do that. So here we see this work in the global Catholic community being organized through 7 goals. And the first goal in the upper left is the cry of the earth. And there are many ways to respond to that through action. And as you can see, this cry of the earth is connected specifically with 4 other goals. So we respond to the cry of the earth through simple lifestyles. We respond to the cry of the earth through community engagements and through partnering with others. We respond to the cry of the earth through ecological spirituality. And that takes many forms, and it supports personal change or conversion so that we're acting differently and we're thinking differently. We're thinking of the greater good. And finally, the cry of the earth is supported through ecological education, which is across the spectrum from the earliest years through the university and on to research. So and it's true for each of these. If we want to focus on cry of the poor, we see that ecological economics, focusing on that is one way of addressing that. So I'm not going to go through each of these, but what I want to point out is that there is this organization and this way of thinking about how we can support how we can support global ease of the environment, lessen the gases, and improve the earth. So I have just a few more slides which I want to use to bring it down to your own areas. So here, for example, is a slide that speaks to 3 different NGOs operating right in Kerala, India, where I know some of you are from. This Ashray Foundation is very impressive. It was started it was started 18 years ago. It's an interfaith group as well as a NGO. And I know some of our Muslim brothers and sisters are involved with this. And it really focuses on interventions that are aligned with the wisdom of nature. And you have Thanol and also the Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and the Environment. So these are things you can go back to if you're from Kerala, India. Now, these are the Catholic bishops in Kerala. This was in just recently. The environmental protection is an expression of faith in God, said the bishops of the Kerala state. Our faith calls for protecting the creation of God and adopting our lifestyle accordingly. The Kerala Catholic Bishops' Council said in a statement after its August 10th meeting, attended by 36 bishops. So I'm not going to go on, but you can see right in your state of Kerala that there is strong Catholic commitment to environmental change and protection. Now, this is a wonderful Islamic-based group in Africa that was founded by Saba Khan, who was the co-founder of Enviro Muslims. And I don't have much time, but what I want to bring out here is just a few things in this last paragraph that point to the Quran and prophetic teachings that relate specifically to the environment. And now here we have the Laudato Si movement in Kenya, and we have different forms of it. We have Laudato Si circles, which are small groups at the parish level that meet twice a month to discuss Pope Francis's encyclical. And each circle has a facilitator. That's what they mean by animator. And then there's a center, a Laudato Si center. There are Laudato Si animators who promote the Laudato Si movement, and Laudato Si Week. And then finally, I wanted to bring out this last group, the ecologically converted family Laudato Si circle. So these are family Laudato Si circles right in Kenya. So wait a minute here. What is this? Okay, let's see if we can go to the next. Can you see the next slide?
The lower left-hand corner.
Yes, I went to the left-hand corner.
Not yet.
You can't.
Yeah, just click it. There you go. There you go. Now you got it.
Okay. Yes, the BioLogos Foundation. The reason that I want to mention this is that this is a new movement which is gaining a lot of ground here in the United States. It's headed by Francis Collins, and some of you may recognize his name. He was the director of the lead investigator on the Human Gene Project. And he also headed for over 10 years the National Institutes of Research and Health. And the purpose here is to work particularly with evangelical churches and to help them realize the compatibility of religion and science, which is what we've been talking about all this time. So I'm going to go now. I'm not going to go into this. This is a good example of what one group does in one meeting. This is an interfaith group here in California with leaders from different religions. And in 1 month, they do amazing work. But let's just bring our meeting to a close now. And I want to look at Wangari Maathai, who received the Nobel Peace Award, not only for sustainability, but it also mentioned democracy and peace. And of course, she was an extraordinary example to us all of what we can do. And so the last part of my title, you might remember, was what else is needed besides we have science challenging us, we have religion challenging us, but what else is needed? And it's our participation. We need to educate ourselves about climate change and what we can do to join others in moving forward. It keeps the need in front of us by practicing as we can simple living. The advantage of making changes personally is that it keeps it in our mind, and we begin awakening to the number of things that in fact we can do. We become aware of situations that need to change, for example, the use of plastic and affecting this in our community. The important thing is not to do it alone. Find a group that you can work with, whether it's one other person, and pray with them and integrate what's happening legislatively. This is all about, of course, changing ourselves, which is hard to do, but we have the spiritual resources within ourselves and within our traditions to support us. So I'm going to stop right there. I'm afraid I've gone over time, but I hope it's been of some use. Thank you for hanging in there with me. And I'm very interested in any other comments. I don't know.
It was very meaningful and practical session, Marita. And we do practice in our schools zero plastics. We teach children not use plastics. Then we also teach children grow trees, because more trees, more oxygen, and we also make clean and green schools. So there's small efforts in making our own environment, make sure
That's
environment is taken care.
wonderful. And Christopher, you're speaking from India, from Kerala?
Yeah, I'm from India, right?
Wonderful, thank you.
Very meaningful session, very meaningful. I loved it.
Thank you so much, Christopher. It's hard to face. We have to, we can't just stay in our understanding as life was. But there is the joy of really realizing we are one family, and that and the joy in that. Yes, Sister Jane.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marietta, for that good presentation. Actually, I'm very surprised. I'm hearing some of the movement in Kenya from you, and it's very strange that I have not heard about them. But what I want to say, in the Catholic Church in Kenya, which is now taking us within the ecumenical, we have a project called Mother Earth Project. Led by one of the Franciscan father, he's called Father, I've forgotten his name, anyway, and he's my neighbor just here, 2 blocks, Father Herman from Germany. It's a very, very active one, and it cuts across the whole country. And also, I belong to one of the groups that we have to meet the members of parliament to talk about climate change. So I think I never expected this presentation, but it's quite interesting. Yeah, thank you. I never thought how powerful it would be. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Jane. So you're telling people, what I heard you say is that they could contact you to make contact with this Franciscan who has Mother Earth groups all over Kenya. Is that right?
Yes. Very powerful.
Wonderful. That's
very
wonderful.
Powerful.
So please, are they interfaith?
Yeah. Even Mustafa belongs to it. Yeah, we meet. They're just next door. Even Mustafa belongs to it and all that. Yeah, and we have even another Sheikh, Mohammed. He also belongs to the movement. Yeah.
Oh, how wonderful. So I mentioned, and this will be the last thing I say, I mentioned that there is this wonderful group in Africa, Muslim group in Africa that's doing wonderful work. And you can get it in my slides, because you'll have my slides. I'll go back to it. But also let us hear Sister Jane speak of the interfaith Mother Earth groups. Because when we come together from different faiths and from different levels of commitment, we get hope and we encourage one another. So I just want to point that out. And I want to thank you all for hanging in there with me. I really extended our time, and I'm sorry for that. But you'll have the slides and you'll have my talk, I guess.
Thank you.
So I bow in gratitude for your listening hearts and minds and staying with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I think we're closing then, Marita. We still have a few more minutes. Is there any other question?
Oh, okay.
If not, we'll conclude this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marita, and all others and professors, for this presentation. Was really educating me as well. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Katie.
Bye. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
And
you so much.
remember, don't try and do it alone.
Yeah, networking.
And God is with us. Allah is with us. Blessings to each of us as we go forward.
Thank you, Bob, for helping us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next week, Bob Graff is presenting, I think, aren't you, Bob?
Yes, yes. I'm going to speak about a whole list of problems and maybe a discussion of how we can deal with them in a practical way.
And Father Augustine will be hosting we'll go back to the regular Zoom link that Father Augustine provides. So this will also go up on the GMU website. The talk I gave last week and Marita's will be both in the GMU website and Father Augustine's program. Thank you very much. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
I know.